Hi there, everyone. Welcome back to Utility Sports. And in today's video, we're going to be coming at you with a player profile for an NBA draft prospect that I really love to watch. He's been very entertaining this season in his senior season. And of course, I'm talking about Ron Harper Jr. from Rutgers. He is a very intriguing player in this year's class, and I'm excited to be doing a player profile. This is the first one we've done of the 2022 NBA draft prospects. So what I want you to do is comment right now. Let me know which player you would like to see next. I want to make this a series. I would love to continue doing this moving forward. So let me know which players you would like to see in the near future so I can go ahead and get around to them. And now without further ado, let's actually jump into the video here and talk about Ron Harper Jr. In this scouting profile. I really do like this kid. So we're going to talk about that. Again, hit that subscribe button if you're new. Leave a like on today's video if you do enjoy. I put a ton of work into these. Not only watching the players, but then also putting together the materials, going through and editing the videos as well. So hopefully you are enjoying them. So let's get forward here into what the player profile outline is going to include. First of all, we're going to start off with some player information. That way you guys know and are informed on who this player specifically is. You know, what school he plays for. If he has any former family members who played in the NBA, what his strengths and weaknesses are, the player archetype, which is pretty much the way I see him fitting in the NBA, what kind of role he'll play into, my expected draft range, where he'll actually go on NBA draft night, and then also where I would take him in his class, which kind of shows where some value could be. For example, if a player is going to go in the second round, but I see him as a first round level player, that could be a potential sleeper or steal for a team. So gives you a good idea on kind of where my evaluation's at in comparison to where I actually expect the player to go on draft night. So let's get started here with that player information. Like I'm talking about, he's a senior guard / forward from the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. 6'6", 245 pounds with around a 6'10" wingspan. Nothing concrete yet on his wingspan, so I think the NBA draft combine will be important, because if that measures in a little bit better, maybe 6'11" or even 7 feet potentially, it could really help his draft stocks even more. He is also the son of former NBA champion guard Ron Harper. He played for the Chicago Bulls most notably, and was really instrumental to their success, specifically earlier in Jordan's career. He was very strong defensively, Ron Harper was, with his hands, especially in the hand check era. He was one of the best defensive guards in the league. I don't think a lot of people really know who he is, especially in today's generation of kids who watch basketball. I don't think a lot of them are aware of Ron Harper and how pivotal he was actually for those Bulls teams. But Ron Harper Jr. is the son of former NBA champion Ron Harper. And then here, you look at his senior season stats, had a really nice season, averaged nearly 16 points a game, 6 rebounds, nearly 2 assists, over a steal a game, and also over half a block a game. And actually pretty good shooting splits from the field, 44% from the field, which is solid. High degree of difficulty type shooter. So the fact that he's shooting into the mid 40s is pretty good. Massive improvement from 3 this year at 39%, and then nearly an 80% free throw shooter. So overall, pretty good shooting splits. I believe he shot about 47.5% on twos. So again, Ron Harper Jr., there's kind of the player information, the statistics behind his season, and also some of his physicals and everything that you need to know to get a good feel for who this prospect is as a player. Let's move forward now into the first strength I want to talk about here of Ron Harper Jr.'s game, and that is his shot creation element, specifically into the mid-range area. He has really improved immensely in this area from his freshman season at Rutgers to where he currently is now as a senior. I'm talking night and day type of difference here with his ability to score now in the mid-range area. He's shown capabilities of stopping on a dime in stride stop scenarios, turning back around and knocking down a jump shot in the mid-range area. He's also capable of just going into the mid-range off of one dribble and pulling up. And I think those are two areas of basketball that not a lot of people talk about. And I think the casual fan's less aware of how important this shot specifically is. When you get to the NBA, a lot of defense is predicated on covering the three-point line now and also protecting the rim. To be able to add a player who can operate in the mid-range area, is comfortable and capable there, definitely does give you a bonus offensively. He's going to be able to hurt teams that have drop defense centers. You could probably put him in the pick and roll as a ball handler a little bit. And specifically as well, maybe he's a little bit of a post-up option for you. With his size and physicality, I think it could work in the NBA a little bit if you have certain mismatches and matchups. He could be an interesting post-up option for you as well. So even though there aren't, a lot of opportunities for him probably at the next level as an on-ball creator, He does have some of those elements that maybe, end of shot clock possessions, or, if you need a basket in the third quarter or second quarter of a game, maybe Ron Harper Jr. is a little bit of a go-to bench scorer for you early in his career. Not that he's going to average 16 to 18 points a game in the NBA. I just don't think he's going to, but he does give you a little bit more upside there than just being a strictly 3-and-D type of player. So there is some value here with that from Ron Harper Jr. The next one I want to talk about is his shooting with range, another area where he has immensely improved, specifically even from his junior to senior season, because you look at what he shot this year, about the same amount of volume between his junior and senior season, but he did start knocking it down with more regularity. And I think a key aspect to that is when he's catching the ball square to the rim. In these clips here, you're going to be able to see him catching the ball with his feet squared up to the rim, even when he's on the move. And for any movement shooter, that's great. It is essential that they are still balanced. And that's one of the toughest things to do, is be on the move, running at full speed with a defender trailing you, catch with your feet squared and go up in one motion. Doesn't waste any time. He's very smooth in this approach. And that's really where he's improved greatly from his junior to senior season. Junior year, Ron Harper Jr. would not have made some of these shots. And then senior season, he started making them with regularity. And that became a focal point for the Scarlet Knights offense, because of his capability to move off the screen, catch the ball, and he has a very high release point as well, which makes him a difficult cover out on the perimeter because he releases the ball above his head. And it also gives him a pretty good shot make potential here because of his capability to score the basketball on the move and to shoot it with a high release point. Makes it very tough to cover him if he's going to be willing to run off of screens. And up to this point in his career, he has been. So I think nothing changes there moving into the NBA. He's going to play off the ball very, very well, and he has the nice catch and shoot elements that you need as well. You'll see it in a few clips here as well, that he's willing to trail plays, go ahead and knock down a three, and then also has some capabilities to, just be a stationary catch and shoot guy. So he fits pretty well in today's modern NBA with his shooting touch. He's able to shoot the three ball with consistency, and he shoots it with range as well. I'm not worried at all about the transition to the 3-point line at the NBA level, which is an extra, foot and change deeper at the NBA level. So for me, with Ron Harper Jr. here, I do really think that his 3-point shooting, being one of his biggest strengths coming into the league, is not going to go anywhere. And I actually think it's going to be a very nice addition for an NBA roster to add his size and shooting touch out on the perimeter. Then we move on here to his physicality and scoring through contact, which again, I think this is one of his biggest strengths and one that he's had most consistently. This is one where he hasn't improved a ton, but that's because he was already really good at it, even as a sophomore and junior in college. And part of the reason here why is you look at his frame. I mean, he's 6'6", 245 pounds. He's like a truck coming down at you. You don't want to get in front of him. There's a ton of times this year where he challenged bigs physically and would win that matchup. He can go into centers, plays through contact really well, welcomes contact, and then also is willing to go into a shot blocker's chest. He's not going to avoid shot blockers. He's going to hunt them. And that is actually a really good skill to have. You get into the chest of a shot blocker, you knock him back a little bit, you're going to draw more fouls that way. You're also going to eliminate the shot block element, because when you get hit in the chest, it knocks you backward and you can't really protect the rim at the same rate. So Ron Harper Jr., that's really where one of his greatest assets is he's not only going to try and get baskets around the rim, but he's not afraid of it at all. And in fact, he's going to hunt it. He's going to try his hardest to get to the rim and finish through contact. And I do really like that. I think that's one of those elements that if you're an NBA team and you're looking to add an ancillary player, someone who can come in and play off of a star or, play in a system, Ron Harper Jr. is going to do this so well because he can score in the mid-range. He can shoot the three ball. He can finish around the rim. He has elements of all three levels of scoring that you want to have. A lot of the star players in the league are three-level scorers. Now, Ron Harper Jr. probably not going to be a star. In fact, I would bet against that. But what he's going to do is just be a really nice role player. He's going to come in and be a phenomenal addition for a team, specifically because of his willingness to do everything. He wants to shoot threes. He wants to shoot mid-range shots that are open. He wants to shoot around the rim and draw contact, get himself to the free throw line. There's a lot of value here to this, and he also shoots the free throws really well at nearly an 80% clip. So Ron Harper Jr., I think he's going to come in and really help an offense, even though offense probably not his strongest suit, because we'll talk about what he got from his father, and that's on the defensive end of the floor. And unlike his father, he's a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger, maybe not in the hands quite yet. Ron Harper, like I talked about in the open, was extremely strong with his hands. But Ron Harper Jr. probably has better technical footwork, probably offers a little bit more length and size, and he's going to offer more defensive flexibility. In some of the clips here, you're going to see him matching up with guard Jaden Ivey, who's my #1 player in this year's class. I'm in love with Jaden Ivey as a prospect, specifically because of his speed and his ability to get downhill. And you see here Ron Harper Jr.'s technique and his footwork allow him to stay in front of the most electric player in all of college basketball, Jaden Ivey. Now, Ivey makes the shot here, but it's an extremely difficult attempt. And Ron Harper Jr. is the reason why. The fact that he has the flexibility to go out and guard the fastest, quickest player in all of college basketball, but you can also throw him at bigs, has enough physicality where he's going to be able to box out bigs. You could probably play him as a power forward early in his NBA career, but you could also use him to guard some guards. And that is really rare that you have someone who can guard 1 through 4. And I think even, down the road at some point, a coach might be crazy enough to play him at the 5, and I don't think it's a death sentence. So Ron Harper Jr. here, very interesting player for me defensively because he's very sound with footwork. He's what I want to call a multi-positional defender. And what I mean by that, and that's not a misspeak there, I did say positional twice. The reason why is because he can guard multiple positions, but he's also so good defensively because of how he positions his body. So he's a positional defender. And the thing I love about that there is coaches are going to rave about him. Kind of reminds me of Herb Jones from last year, who's been making a lot of noise with the New Orleans Pelicans. And I don't know if a lot of the casual fans know about Herb Jones, how well he's been playing in New Orleans, but I loved him last year as well. I was higher on him than everyone. And I see Ron Harper Jr. in somewhat of a similar light, specifically with the defensive capabilities. Now, Herb Jones probably a little bit more athletic, a little bit more bounce, a little bit longer and lengthier than Ron Harper Jr., but Harper Jr. has some of that same physicality, strength, multi-positional defensive flexibility. He's an intriguing defensive player, and also, like I talked about, is willing to score at all 3 levels. So you're asking probably what's his weaknesses. If he can score on all 3 levels and a really good defender, why isn't he a guy we're talking about in the top 5? We're going to get to that here with some of his weaknesses. First of all, let's talk about the athletic profile. Even though in that clip you saw him hold off Jaden Ivey, beat him to his spot, make Jaden Ivey hit a really tough runner, moving to his right, the athletic profile here still isn't great for Ron Harper Jr. Now, he's had a couple poster dunks, but for the most part, he's going to be a below the rim finisher. And athletically, as a senior, you have to wonder if his athletic potential and profile is tapped out a little bit. Probably gets a little bit stronger. And the one thing for me here is, you talk about why he's so flexible defensively. Part of that is the weight that he plays at. He plays at 245 pounds. So he's very strong, has a lot of mass to his body. I think the one thing here that I would like to see from him, and I hope an NBA strength training program does get this done for him, I want to see him lose 5 to 10 pounds of that, little bit of baby fat he's still got on his body. And I want to see it turn into raw muscle. If he can stay around that 240 pound mark, but change some of that fat to muscle, because you look at him and he's not the most built guy, but he's got a lot of mass to him. If he can tighten that up a little bit, get a little bit stronger, I think it's going to help him immensely athletically. I think that, if he just gets in a little bit better shape, specifically his core, maybe his legs a little bit and a little bit into his arms, I think it could make the world of a difference for what he is athletically. But as of right now, with where he currently sits athletically, is a big question mark. So I would like to see him probably change his body type a little bit, but not too much, because I don't want him to change his style of play, specifically on the defensive end of the floor. But I do think that there are some limitations to him athletically right now. Specifically, we'll talk about his burst. And the burst is the one that has the biggest concern to me. Even on plays he scores at the collegiate level, it just looks a little more difficult than it should. He gets himself into a situation where he beats a guy off the dribble, but he just doesn't have the athleticism to pull away from them and make himself get an easy, uncontested layup. Instead, he has to play through that contact more. Like I said, he is really good at playing through contact, but let's be honest about it. Wide open layups are pretty much 100% guaranteed give me, and contested layups probably around 60% for him. So that's a 40% drop off there because I have some question marks about his burst. He's probably going to have to make and create a lot of difficult shots for himself just because he's not as quick and athletic as other people. And I think the issue there with that specifically, you look at what James Harden's struggling with this year, and you look at what Luka Doncic was struggling with at the beginning of the season when he was playing out of shape a little bit. they just couldn't blow by guys. They couldn't beat guys off the dribble. You know, and obviously Ron Harper Jr. is not to the level of either of those guys, but he does have some of the same physical frame situation questions that Luka has at the beginning of the season every year. And then also James Harden, we know how he likes to go out and enjoy his weekends. To say a little bit about that. So Ron Harper Jr., you know, with the same physical profile in terms of how heavy he plays, he's not going to blow by a ton of guys. And I think that is my biggest concern for him overall and holistically, is how is he going to beat guys off the dribble? Because he's probably going to be a gap player offensively in terms of he's going to catch the ball in the corner. He's going to catch the ball and look to make something happen in half a second. Otherwise, he's probably not going to score a ton. He's not going to be the guy you give the ball to in the offense consistently. So for me, he's going to have to take advantage of some of those opportunities. And that's really where my biggest question is how does he take advantage of those if he's not the most athletic or the quickest player? Think about how Tyrese Maxey exploits defenses right now. You know, he catches the ball and goes, and he beats everyone downhill because of how quick he is. Ron Harper Jr. is quite frankly the opposite. He is not going to beat anybody with his quickness. He's going to beat people with his size and frame. So definitely leans itself to a little bit more difficulty at the NBA level. And then we get to my third weakness here for him, and that's his projected upside. Because, you know, first of all, he's a senior, and I don't think age really indicates potential. Because you look at potential, for me, potential is something that is quantifiable based on skill set and, you know, areas that we could see them improve. The issue for Ron Harper Jr. here is I think he's kind of tapped out some of his potential through the 4 years he's played at Rutgers. We've seen him really improve a lot. But at the same time, I think his athleticism is what's going to hold back his potential now at this point, because I don't really see ways, unless he changes his body type a little bit, like I talked about, changing some of that mass into muscle. How does he become more dynamic as a scorer? How does he get to his spots quicker? How does he elevate a little bit higher when attacking the rim? And that really is going to come down to his physical frame. If he gets into better shape, I could see him taking a massive rise yet. But at the same time, if he doesn't, there's some questions here about how great he can really be. I think he's a smart player. I think he's a phenomenal prospect still. I really do like him as a prospect, but I don't see star potential for him. So that is one of those things that probably would keep him out of the lottery. We move here now to my player archetype, and you see here I have him labeled as a 3-and-D plus wing. And what I mean by that is, you know, he's not the traditional 3-and-D wing in terms of, oh, he's going to catch and shoot a lot of 3-pointers, and he's going to play good defense. He's going to do the defense part, and he is going to catch and shoot threes, but he's got that plus element to him where he's able to score around the rim. He's able to score into the mid-range if you want him to. And then he's also going to be able to take guys off the bounce a little bit from three, has some creation potential to him, and he's a gamer. I think there's not enough said throughout the NBA draft process about guys who are just gamers. You look at Johnny Davis from Wisconsin, he's another example of a gamer. You can watch a guy and realize, okay, he's got this flaw or this issue, but he's really great here. Sometimes people just rise to the occasion, and Ron Harper Jr. is one of those players. He did it this year when Rutgers had massive need for it to try and get to the NCAA tournament. They went on a run against a whole bunch of AP top 25 teams, mostly because of Ron Harper Jr. So for me, he's a player I'm really intrigued by, which is why we're going to go here into the draft range. I expect him to go between picks 25 and 40. Now, I know a lot of the NBA draft experts out there are labeling him as specifically a second-round pick. I think a team in the late 20s could look to add him because they're going to say, well, we're a contending team, and we could see him being a very nice pickup here for us, specifically because he's ready to play within a role. He's going to help us defensively, gives you some flexibility, can probably play him at the 3, 4, or 2 position in the NBA. The 2 position, I think, may be a little questionable for him early, but the 3 and 4, I definitely think are in play. And then for me, where I would take him is I take him pick 19 and after. If I had the 19th pick and the 18 guys ahead of him, which is essentially what I'm saying here, weren't on the board anymore, I would really look at him. Now, potentially, if I'm a team that doesn't need a guard, I could see him maybe even going higher to me. But for the most part, I think pick 19 is really where his range would start for me. So you see, there's probably pretty good value here for him. I have him around 19th on my board right now. Those things are subject to change too as we get through the draft combine. So nothing is set in stone yet at this point. But overwhelmingly here, I feel like Ron Harper Jr. is going to be a steal in this year's class. I think he's probably going to go in round 2. I would guess anywhere from 30 to 35 realistically. But when I'm looking at Ron Harper Jr. here, I think this is going to be a phenomenal pickup for a team. And I think wherever he goes, they're going to be really happy with what he is. He's going to be the type of rookie here that, they talk about, well, we're not sure exactly what we have in him. And then all of a sudden by like game 10 of the season, the coach is raving about him in post-game interviews and saying that he wants to give him more minutes. And I think that's going to happen. I think it's going to play out that way. And Ron Harper Jr. is going to have a really nice NBA career. Again, hopefully you guys have enjoyed today's video. If you did, make sure to comment which prospect you would like to see next. Let me know your thoughts on Ron Harper Jr. Hit that subscribe button, leave a like as well if you did enjoy today's video. Again, a lot of work goes into it. Hit the notification bell too. I don't usually ask you guys to do this, but it would help you see every single time we post. There's gonna be a lot of NBA draft content coming on the channel. So make sure to hit that subscribe button, and we'll catch you guys in the very next Utility Sports video.